In 1971, we were invited to play the first Australian pop festival. It was to be in the state of Victoria, in a place called Mulwala, the Mulwala Pop Festival. We were invited to play with some other Australian groups, and the most famous of those at the time was Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs.
I'd arranged for Manassas to go there as well. That was Stephen Stills and his band. And Stephen at the time was traveling on a diplomatic passport because his father was in the diplomatic corps of the U.S. government, and therefore Stephen got a diplomatic passport which allowed him to go through customs without being searched, basically. And we had flown down there, and Bob and I and Stills, and I can't even remember, a couple of guys in his band played poker. It was on a 747 when the top of the 747s used to have a piano bar and a few tables, and didn't sell the seats up there. You could go up there and do other things besides play cards or have a drink, and we did all of the above and some of the unmentionable as well. And wound up taking every dime that Stills had on him, I do know that. And when we got to Sydney, Stills had a plane and he was going off to Melbourne, and we were staying in Sydney to have a press conference. And it was arranged in the coffee shop in the airport, and we were going to go have our press conference. And at the time we had played a bunch of gigs in the U.S. and didn't have our equipment. It had been stored by a company called Studio Instrument Rentals. So we didn't even see our equipment until we actually went to the airport to LAX to check in, and it was all sitting in front of the ticket counter. So I thought it'd be a heck of a good time to take any of the drugs that anybody had and put them in the equipment. We wouldn't be carrying it ourselves, and everybody would then be able to carry on when we got to Australia. So we found this ammunition box that we kept guitar strings in and a couple of little chords, a couple of harmonicas, whatever. And each guy came forward, and nobody's going to carry anything. Well, meanwhile, that never was the truth, and everybody had something, including yours truly. And we all put it in this ammunition box and put it back into the equipment and left it there, and off we went to check in and fly to Australia.
But when we came in, I guess everybody had some kind of drugs in them, especially Henry, who was totally hooked on speed at the time. He had all the syringes and the dust and all the stuff. When we went through, everything went okay. There was no problem, you know. They didn't search us, really. They were happy that we were there. You must think about how Australia was in the early 70s. It was still very isolated. We came in, went through the customs office, and went to the coffee shop and the restaurant to wait for the rest of the guys, and sat on a table, have some coffee, and hang out.
When we get to the press conference in the airport, this little Australian chap, customs guy, comes in and just announces, you boys can continue on with your press conference and have a bit of food, because we're going to search all of your equipment. Which was just a wonderful thing to hear. And unbeknownst to me, I hadn't gotten all of this stuff from everybody. Next thing we know, stuff is coming out on every table during this press conference, and guys are popping pills and taking stuff out of their socks and their shoes and who knows where, and ingesting anything and everything.
Everybody's pulling whatever they had, pills, speed, coke, all the stuff, and putting it on the sugar, in the coffee, everywhere, dropping it. It was a scene right out of the French Connection movie.
And the press conference is continuing on, and they call Stephen's plane off the runway back to the airport to search him and his equipment. But he's got the diplomatic passport. He doesn't get searched. They search everything. They're okay. Off they go to fly to Melbourne.
One funny tale is that the record company guy, some young kid, you know, that was there as representing the record company, he was sitting with us drinking coffee, and Henry, in the panic when we see the customs officers arrive, gives him his stash. his needles, his methadone, and all the stuff was wrapped in a package. Gives it to this record company guy and tells him, "You take care of this because I'm going to need it later, okay?" The poor guy was panicking. He didn't know what to do. He was a young guy. He had never been exposed to drugs or any of that. So what he did is he went outside and dropped the stuff in a fountain. And I guess all the speed that Henry had just went all over the water and dissolved.
A half hour goes by or so, we're doing a press conference, in comes this little guy again. He goes, "Well, we found it." Just like, I mean, if you were an American, that happened, they'd come in with guns drawn, okay, against the wall, you're all under arrest. This guy comes in, "Well, we found it. When you're done, come down, we'll escort you down to the customs room," okay? We finish the press conference, everybody goes downstairs. They said, "Get all your hand luggage and everybody get your individual suitcase and bring it into the customs locker room." Well, this is actual metal lockers where the customs guys change their clothes. There's a ping pong table in there, and we're now going to wait for the head of customs to come fly in from some other Adelaide or somewhere else where he was.
We went through the customs search thing. They make us take our clothes off, and they did their whole number.
Go through everybody's luggage, hand luggage. They get to my little briefcase, and there's this little tin foil thing wrapped up. And the guy pulls it out, and it's kind of folded in 3 ways, the way I used to fold a little bindle of cocaine. And he looks at me, and he says, you need to have some fun. And he puts it back in my briefcase, doesn't I? Go, "Whoa, God, this is great." We're all naked, and we decide we're going to play ping pong while they go through our clothes. So they go through all of our clothes. We're standing there playing ping pong. Finally, another guy comes in. "Okay, the guy has come in and wants to meet with whoever's in charge." So I go in, and he said, on his desk is this ammunition box, and he's got needles and cocaine and hashish and opium and marijuana and methadone, and I mean it is the total complete package of drugs of the times, you know. And he says, "Well, who's going to own up to owning this?" I'm sitting there naked at this guy's desk, head of customs for Australia, and he's asking me this, and I go, "You're looking at the wrong guy, fella." I said, I'll tell you truthfully, I said, "Here's the invoice from Studio Instrument Rentals. I haven't seen this equipment, and none of these guys have seen this equipment for a couple of weeks. It's been stored. It was sent by them to the airport. Here's the invoice. We've never touched this equipment. I don't know who put that in there. I don't know whose drugs that is. I don't know if you're trying to plant something. In fact, let me call the American Embassy." He goes, No. Let's not bring the embassy into this. I'm sure we can work something out." Well, all of a sudden I realize that I'm on offense now instead of defense. And the guy just wants to get this done and sweep it under the rug. And I said, "Why don't you keep the ammunition box?" I said, "I'd like the guitar strings out at least, and all the drugs, and we'll go about our business." And he said, "Well, how long, what are you playing?" I said, "We're playing the Mulwala Pop Festival in wherever the heck outside of Melbourne, and we're playing another couple of gigs, and then we're out of here. And I promised to be out of the country in 7 days, and if you don't want us back, so be it. You keep that." And he said, "Well, we have to keep the equipment." I said, "Well, if you keep the equipment, we can't play, and you're going to have 50 or 100,000 people very upset, and then you're going to have to deal with that." He said, "Well, okay, you take the equipment, I'll keep the ammunition box and the drugs." I said, "Why don't you just keep the drugs? Give me the ammunition box, I'll put the guitar strings in, the harmonicas, and we'll be out of here." He said, "Okay." And it was a handshake, and away we went.